Every visionary has a story to tell. These stories educate and inspire us all.
You could hear them cranking up in the morning and hear the click, click, click of the roller coaster.
It's really feeling satisfied and feeling gratified with bringing happiness to young children, especially families.
Working with people who are having a good time is so much better than any other job.
Join us as we learn from these trailblazers.
The seed to me being in the theme park, amusement park industry dates back to probably 1958. I was an 11-year-old kid living on Buckeye Lake, Ohio, and I had an old town rowboat that I used to row across the lake at 11 years old to the Buckeye Lake Amusement Park, the one that was owned by Carlin. Walked around, just saw all these sights, sounds. I didn't have money to ride the rides or anything. But then one day, I was standing there talking to the lady that owned the miniature golf course. And she said, "Would you like a little part-time work? I see you around here all the time." And I said, "Well, yeah." So what she did was offered me the position of sweeper of the greens. And what I could do is I would come in the morning and I would have to sweep the 18 holes of the miniature golf course by hand with a little broom, get the leaves and trash or whatever off the greens and the putting. And then I got to play free until the first paid customer came. I could lay in my bed at night across the lake and see the tracer lights on the roller coaster. And it was, I'd say, half a mile. But you could see the lights, and then you could hear the click of the screens a little bit after you could see the car go over the top. Went to the Ohio State University in journalism, photography. Then I went from a master's program, and I had to, instead of a written thesis, I had to do a documentary film. And I ended up doing the half-hour documentary film on Cedar Point in 1972. And so I spent a lot of time in Cedar Point that year working on my documentary film. There was an ad for a general manager / senior editor for a trade magazine based in Nashville, Tennessee that covered the amusement park, fair, and carnival industries. I spent 18 years as senior editor at Amusement Business covering the amusement park, fair, and carnival industries. That's where I got to really see the industry from an angle where a lot of people don't see it. Amusement Business was a trade publication. And so when a new coaster would open at Cedar Point or wherever, I would cover the opening and, fight tooth and nail to be among the first to ride it, of course, as a coaster fan. But I would write the story from a different perspective than the other fan organizations that would. And I could write a story about a brand new coaster and not talk about its speed or dips or anything. What I would be talking about is how much was spent, who they bought it from, who designed it, what would be the return on investment to the park of this particular ride. Also, how are they financing it? Are they raising the rates at the gate? That's the kind of stuff that I got. So by doing that, I got to know the internal workings of parks much better than I did the actual rides. There's two totally different sides in creating a roller coaster. And that's the park's angle and the manufacturer's angle. And often they wouldn't mesh the way they should. And so I love this internal conflict on how to resolve these things. Gene Sloan, I would say he gave me my biggest break as far as being known as a person within the industry to talk to by media. And he was USA Today. He was asking me various questions about I even forget right now what company or what ride it was, because you talk to the manufacturer, they'll tell you one thing, you talk to the park, they'll tell you something different, but I was able to give both perspectives. And he says, well, what should I call you? I said, well, I'm senior editor. He says, okay. And I said, and you can always throw in expert if you'd like, just jokingly. And by golly, there it was. The next day in the USA Today, it said Tim O'Brien, an expert on theme parks. And it stuck. I guess when you get something in USA Today, it's considered there. So it's in print. So from then on, I was considered an expert, which was kind of cool. And then the IAAPA ended up asking me, hey, we've got a journalist that's interested in this, would you talk to them? So I started becoming almost a voice piece for the association, not official, but again, as a third party, because a lot of people would call the association and said, is there somebody that's not connected to the park or not necessarily a consumer that knows what's going on that could give me the full picture? And they would almost always recommend me. I saw the industry at that time as a big playground, because I was still young enough at that point to get out and want to play in the parks. The things that I really liked about parks at that time and what I saw is the ability of park owners to embrace their customers. They welcomed me as just as greatly as they did their paying customers, and which kind of impressed me. I never worked for a publication or a company whose main job was to put smiles on people's faces. You know, ultimately you have to make money, but back in 84, 85, 86, maybe up until about 90, I think the priority for most of these smaller parks was exactly that. Back then it was, you know, these were workers. The owner or the president of the park would be out there either planting flowers, greasing the roller coaster, or whatever. Even at the Six Flags parks, you would see the general manager out there on the street working, doing things, identifying themselves with their people. Today you don't see that as much. There were a lot of pioneers when I first started that actually created those parks. And a couple of the books that I've written have been about the pioneers of the theme park, amusement park industry. If I were entering the theme park industry today, I don't think I could have gained that passion for it. I don't think today's parks are as people-oriented, as family-oriented. They say they are, but there's such a drive to that bottom line now. When I started in 84, 85, virtually everybody would tell me their attendance. I was involved in putting the chart together every year that basically people lived and died to see. It was always on our year-end issue right after Christmas. And it was always giving the attendance. When Michael Eisner came in to Disney, he decided that he wasn't going to live and die by numbers every Monday morning like he did when he was in the film industry. So at that point, Michael Eisner said, we're not going to release our numbers anymore. So then everybody decided, well, if Disney's not going to answer or give us numbers, we're not either. And so within a 5-year period, everybody didn't want to do it. I'd be walking down the trade show floor and I would see the president of a chain or whatever walking toward me, big smile on his face. And he'd walk up to me and shake my hand and say, Tim, how you doing? He would walk by and he palmed me a little piece of paper, and I would just open the piece of paper and it would be exactly the information that I'd need. And by the end of my tenure at Amusement Business, I was getting real numbers from virtually everybody, including Disney. And so it got to the point where our numbers were really accurate there at the end. I called my friend Bob Masterson over at Ripley's, who I had known for like 12 years. I wrote everything about Ripley, about their discovery of their building of aquariums and their expansion when Bob was building the company so strongly. And I called him and he says, all right, yeah, he said, that would be great. Come on in and set up a PR department within the company, which they'd never had. As I say, I crossed over to the dark side of PR, from legitimate journalism to hypo PR. As a spokesperson, I would start talking either about the aquariums or about the Believe It or Not museums, and constantly they'll say, well, what else do you guys do? So then I would have to cross this chasm, which was credibility chasm, and say, okay, well, not only do we have two-headed cows and shrunken heads and the Last Supper pictures made out of laundry lint, on this hand, we've got world-class aquariums. And it was really, it's difficult to keep that brand when you've got that chasm in between from one to the other. When I became a PR person, I had to start telling stories and crafting press releases that told story to the media so that they in turn could write stories to tell the consumer. And that's what I found it very hard because I had to, media didn't want to hear all the flamboyant crap. They wanted the facts, they wanted story ideas, then they would take it from there. And I think that was my largest challenge. But now that has even switched, that with the social media the way it is, with everything going so viral as it is, I am now writing just the way I was back at an amusement business. I'm writing about come on out and enjoy this, come on out and enjoy that, because most of the media now gets their story ideas from the web. The big thing that I see missing are the pioneers. The pioneers who drove this industry with new ideas and new decisions, and a lot of them by trial and error in their own parks. Everything from marketing to roller coasters to whatever. I've done stories on many pioneers who have discovered things and have pioneered something out of necessity because they owned the park. God, I got to come up with something to solve this problem. And so they pioneered that, and then the person down the road said, that's a great idea, I'm going to try that too. And then that's how I think the original pioneers in the industry became pioneers. Now, you're not seeing that as much. You're seeing engineers saying, okay, what can we come up with new? Instead of, it's not an organic movement anymore, it's a specific movement. I saw that there is a really strong correlation between the very successful people in the industry that are members of IAAPA and those that aren't members who are not as successful. And that has kind of given me a whole new perspective of the importance of an association. It has given me camaraderie within the organization as well as within the industry of knowing people who, again, I have learned a lot from. And I think the whole concept of networking is probably maybe the second or third most important thing that IAAPA can offer people, next to the educational opportunities. Unfortunately, I don't like the state of the industry as it is today. It's too corporate. Yes, there's these bright spots, these family-owned parks, these fun, but for amusement parks were originally created for fun. And again, the people who created them, the trolley parks and whatever, did them for profit, of course, but they never forgot the whole fun aspect. It was fun to go to a park. It was not stressful. I don't think the president and his vice president sit around on their Monday morning meeting and talk about what can we do this week to create more fun in our park. And they should, they really should.